Hello from Indianapolis. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, good Monday to you all, February 26, 2024, for another edition, as we are, at 3 p.m. sharp for the Southside Beat here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Chris Halicke, Corey Crisan with you. I'm checking in from Indianapolis. What's up, Chris?
Nothing much. I am not in Indy. I am in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, in which it is currently 88 degrees.
Ooh.
With a high of 90 projected today. We're going to hit 90 in February. It's a little ridiculous.
We're not starting that debate today as to why that's happening. It's warm here in Indianapolis. It's like 65 here. It's warm.
Yeah. Last year, whenever I was there, it was coldish for the most part. Only a couple nights where it was like, okay, it's a little, if you're walking around downtown, you definitely need a thicker jacket, but it wasn't like overly terrible, but it's still, Indianapolis in end of February.
Yeah. Out here in Indianapolis, checking in. I'm staying with some family for the week, so good to catch up with some family today. Good to catch up this week, but time to talk some football, and we were going to do that today in Indianapolis with Omar Khan, of course, the Steelers general manager. He was scheduled to have a press conference with traveling Pittsburgh media at 5:30 today in downtown Indianapolis. But at about 9:50 or so this morning, we got an email from Steelers PR that has been postponed as Omar Khan had a death in his family that he will be tending to. So no Omar Khan today. All condolences, obviously, go to him and his family. So we will check in with Omar Khan at some point this week. As of right now, he is scheduled to talk at 10:30 tomorrow morning at the Indianapolis Convention Center, which is like the big, the big media scrum, if you will, where several coaches and most, if not all, the GMs will convene at the convention center at their respective tables and talk to the press there. But Omar Khan was going to do a more, I guess you could say, intimate type of setting with just the Pittsburgh media today, but that's going to be postponed until sometime later this week.
Yeah, those are typically, he usually has a meeting with just the traveling, like you said, the traveling reporters from Pittsburgh, and that usually includes, beat writers and, TV and stuff like that. But then, whether it be, no matter what, usually that Tuesday when it's a lot of GMs and coaches talking, he'll be in part of that as well. And obviously that's all TBD. So we won't get anything from Omar Khan today, but we do have some news to talk about on the show, because we have not talked about the news on the show because it was after we went off the air on Friday, because that happens quite a bit.
Let it happen.
So we will, we do have something to talk about, even though Omar Khan's not talking today. Mason Cole is no longer a Steeler. Mm-hmm. He was released on Friday. I know that was, speculated, given the Steelers' need to clear some cap space. And, you look at cap casualties and stuff like that. Allen Robinson's obviously a big one. We haven't seen him get cut yet, but that's, $10 million easy right there. And Mason Cole was, a cap casualty, not only for his contract situation, but obviously for his performance, which definitely regressed from what he did in 2022. So no matter what, the Steelers are going to have to address this position either in free agency and or the draft. Because right now, I think your center would be Nate Herbig or Spencer Anderson.
James Daniels.
I know for a fact it's not James Daniels. I know that for a fact. I have actually
certainly an option though.
But it's an option, but it's not an option that anybody on the inside is talking about. I had somebody tell me that earlier last week, and that was even before the Mason Cole stuff happened. It was actually a different conversation that was happening, but James Daniels it's certainly, he has experience, but according to what I've heard, it's not an option for that they're entertaining. So it's right now you've got Nate Herbig and Spencer Anderson as your probably two options. So yeah, the Steelers are going to have to address this at some point, and lo and behold, it's combine week and centers are going to be there. So let the games begin when it comes to that.
Right. I mean, if if they did one thing, it's that they telegraphed that whether it's free agency or the draft, they're going to go for a center. It's just a matter of how at this stage. It was pretty foregone, I think, even before Mason Cole was cut, that the Steelers were going to be in the market for a center. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the attention that Mike Tomlin paid to at the offensive line at the Senior Bowl, and that's just from general observation. That didn't have to take me being there or any kind of inside information. It's just what Mike Tomlin did. You can see it on television just from watching the broadcast. Mike Tomlin, you see the cream-colored hat. He's right on top of things. How close Mike Tomlin paid attention to the offensive line, and in particular, of course, the tackle and center positions that the Steelers need to go after. Now, this is the catch-all with everything because they could go either route with this, and it really depends on what Arthur Smith wants to do for his offense, and it kind of depends on the quarterback as well. And what happens with Mason Rudolph / Kenny Pickett / quarterback X, Y, and Z. Like, do the Steelers go young? Do they go for Jackson Powers-Johnson or Zach Frazier, the top two centers in the draft? Or do they go for free agent? To me, a name that comes to the top of mind is Aaron Brewer, the center for the Titans, who, of course, played for Arthur Smith and was a part of that offense in 2020. Do they go for a free agent and then maybe wait until later rounds to go get an interior lineman or a center? Go get like a Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia, or go get the one from Michigan. Like, there are mid-round options aside from Powers-Johnson and Frazier, who Powers-Johnson pretty much is solidified as a first-round pick by this stage.
Yeah.
Frazier could play his way into the first round with a good week here in Indianapolis after not doing much at the Senior Bowl. So it's pretty foregone. The Steelers are going to go get center now. It's pretty clear-cut. Yeah. It's just a matter of how. And as Jeff M. says here from the chat, would it be prudent to double down, draft and free agency? I think it would be. I think that's a very feasible route for them to go for this interior line. Or they could go draft a center or sign a center, move either Herbig or Anderson or whoever at center to be a backup, and go get another guard. I mean, those are options when it comes to the interior offensive line.
Yeah, and Barber, kind of brings up a good question here. Says if they sign a top tier center in free agency, will they need to draft one? I mean, the thing is that you don't want to ever pigeonhole yourself. So if the Steelers do sign, and I would just say a starting capable center, yes, still, if there's still a best player available type situation in the second round or third round, fourth round, no matter what round it is, and the best player available really is probably a center, then you take them. You never know what the future is gonna hold when it comes to, maybe that signing doesn't work out, and maybe it's a type of contract in which you can cut the guy after a year. You never know. It just depends on the type of contract. If it's a 2-year contract and the first year is absolutely terrible, then lo and behold, you drafted a guy who might be able to take over as a starting center, and you're not being hurt that much with that dead cap or whatever in that second year. So yeah, they have a lot of options here. The one thing, I would be shocked if they didn't address it at some point in free agency, because then you are going into the draft with an absolute need. And that typically isn't the Steelers' way, and that typically isn't the best way to go for any NFL team, is to have a glaring need and not address it. Like the biggest need last year was cornerback. And even with Cam Sutton leaving, they signed Patrick Peterson to help supplement that loss, and then they drafted Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice Jr. in the draft.
Yep.
So they used both mediums to address the biggest need on the team, and I would be shocked if they didn't do both, even if that means signing, whether it be a top tier guy or at least a starting capable guy.
Now, and what happens here at the Combine also, like the Steelers are going to do their diligence on centers. Don't get me wrong here, but let's say they go the free agent route. Let's say they go get Brewer or one of these top options. I use Brewer as an example because he played for Smith, and that's basically just why. And he's pretty good, by the way, if you look at the metrics. And if they go the route of getting a center in free agency, that doesn't exempt them from the draft. They could still go in the mid rounds of the draft and pick up a center to kind of develop and be there. But also, I think what's important is the direction they go at center, I feel, will dictate the direction they go at tackle, if that lines up. Because think about it. If they go for the veteran at center, that's going to eliminate the need to go, dare I say, stretch for Jackson Powers Johnson or stretch for Zach Frazier with the 20th pick. That's going to allow more flexibility with that 20th pick to say, okay, do we still want Jackson Powers Johnson or Frazier? They can have the option to go get one of those two. This is a loaded draft for tackles. And one of those top tackles, one of the top handful maybe, could be in line for the Steelers by the time 20 comes around. So this opens the option at tackle is what it does. And this is all just based on the move that's made by the Steelers in free agency with respect to the center position. If they don't sign a free agent center, which I can't, at this stage, I can't foresee them not doing it.
Yeah.
Like if they don't sign a center in free agency, they have to draft one.
Yeah.
And that would kind of give them a little loss of leverage, so to speak, at 20, where if Jackson Powers Johnson is starting to slide and he's getting near that 20, and maybe the Steelers want to trade up to go get him, might be a team that says, well, wait a minute, why would we trade with you? We know what you're doing already. Like or that's going to make them pay up even more. So that just really fascinates me within the spectrum of what they do in the free agent market with the centers. And also I think as an effect from this cause, what they do at tackle now as an effect to that.
Yeah. Michael Snow brings up here, says it seems to me everyone is forgetting that we need a middle linebacker. We actually, I think, was it Thursday or Friday show?
Late last week we did.
Yeah, we focused on inside linebacker. So I would go back and watch that for sure. But I mean, it's a need for sure, but I would not even classify that as the biggest need on defense. At the end of the day, you still have Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts, two guys who are absolutely capable of starting and doing a decent job. Right now at cornerback, you have Joey Porter Jr. And that's about it. I mean, like Patrick Peterson, played better inside, whether it be at safety or whenever he played inside. Corey Trice Jr., definitely interesting prospect, but at the end of the day was a 7th round pick and already missed his rookie season due to a knee injury. And then Darius Rush, another interesting guy, but again, horribly unproven. Like you need proven guys. You have to have somebody else who has some sort of NFL experience or at least have high quality talent opposite Joey Porter Jr. In my opinion. If it's Patrick Peterson, to me, that's not that's nothing against Patrick Peterson. I think he should be and will be on this team and play in a similar way that he did down the stretch last year. But on defense, cornerback is 100% the biggest need. And really they can afford to address just about any position, maybe even other than edge rusher, because they already have 3. I mean, so, but yeah, just about every other position on the team, even safety, they could afford. If the best player on the board in the draft is a safety in any particular round, I would not be opposed to taking that kind of player if it's the best player out there, just because if you can upgrade, it's nothing against DeMonte Casey, but if you can upgrade, then upgrade.
Sebastian asks, do we know who would be interested in drafting a center in the first round as the Steelers are? I can name a few teams off the top of my head. The Rams would be one, which is the pick right in front of the Steelers.
Yeah.
At 19, Brian Allen is a free agent. That's one team right off the bat. I think the Cowboys are in the market for a new one, and I think the Jaguars might be in the market for a new one. They haven't drafted a center really high lately, and Luke Fortner, I know the kid personally, great kid, but not really panning out the way they thought he would at center. And then the Bears need one. I mean, the Bears need a whole new offensive line. There's some teams, the Panthers, they need a whole new offensive line. So there are certainly teams that are drafting ahead of Pittsburgh, whether it's at 20 or in that second round where Zach Frazier could be available, where they need centers. And if one of those two is enticing enough, those two guys could be gone by the time the Steelers pick between 20 and 51. Now, I wouldn't rule out this situation being in play. Let's say Powers Johnson is gone before 20. Maybe the Steelers are really high on Frazier and they feel they can get him a little bit later, so to speak. Maybe they trade back. Maybe they trade back in the first round, get another pick, and still get Frazier. So, options are on the table everywhere for this kind of stuff. But Sebastian, certainly there are teams that need a center, and the Steelers aren't the only team in the market for Jackson Powers Johnson and for Zach Frazier in the first couple of rounds.
Yeah, the one thing that the Steelers have a little bit in their favor is centers typically aren't taken in the first round unless it's a absolute slam dunk pick.
Yeah.
There will be significantly more tackles and cornerbacks taken in the first round, and since this is such a tackle-rich draft, I would anticipate there being a lot of tackles in the first 19 picks, along with probably 3, maybe even 4 quarterbacks. So
right there, you're at about 10 or 11 picks.
Yeah,
just
and
right
so there. Yeah, and you're not even talking about receiver. You're not talking about guard. You're not talking about interior defensive linemen, edge rushers.
I was gonna say, or any defenders.
Yeah. So there's a good chance that Jackson Powers Johnson would be available at 20. However, that is not a slam dunk because the pick that scares me the most, if the Steelers are Jackson Powers Johnson or bust, the pick that scares me when it comes to that is the Rams pick at 19.
Yep.
Because it's about in that range in which that's probably about the max that, or the highest that I could see a center going. Not often. I think what was Marquise Pouncey, like 16th overall or something like that.
Yeah. Like that.
You typically don't see centers go in the top 10. Maybe if it's a really, really highly touted center, maybe top 15. But then you're, for anybody else, even some of the better center, like I think Marquise Pouncey, I don't know, somebody can look that up for me in the chat. But I think it was like around 16 or something like that. So,
yeah.
So it just goes to show that like it's right in that range where teams are willing if they're high enough on the guy. And since the Rams need that position, and it's a guy it's not typically completely out of the realm of possibility that a center's taken there, that pick scares me there.
I'm looking at a mock draft from CBS Sports, which recently just came out. At pick 20, they have the Steelers taking Fuaga, the offensive tackle out of Oregon State. That would be the 4th ranked if you want to do that offensive tackle. But between Ald of Notre Dame and Fashanu of Penn State, those are going to be the consensus top 2 taken, somewhere in the first 10 to 12 picks. And then from there, it kind of starts to fall between guys like Tyler Guyton, Fuaga. There's several names there, but worth noting, this mock draft has Jackson Powers Johnson going at 21 to Miami, so the pick right after.
Pouncey was actually taken 18th, by the way.
What's that?
Pouncey was taken 18th.
Okay. So again, like if that's a way of how it plays out, if Miami wants Jackson Powers Johnson, like maybe they feel a little heat from the Steelers. I don't think Miami would be able to get Jackson Powers Johnson at 21 if the Steelers were sitting there at 20, even if the Steelers are not planning on taking him. Just that need and that pressure alone would probably cause Miami to want to move up ahead of the Steelers. And then, so to speak, I think there would be a bidding war for moving up. So if the Steelers really want Jackson Powers Johnson, and this is maybe the first time I've mentioned this, or you mentioned this, or we've mentioned this, if the Steelers want Jackson Powers Johnson, they might have to trade up to get him because of that pressure from some of those teams that are sitting behind them in the draft.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you look at first off, the Steelers don't typically trade up.
Right.
They're not.
Which
they're
is
not.
Why when they did it for Broderick Jones, it was like, whoa, what did they do? Yeah.
And so, you look back, I think the last 4 players, if somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the last 4 players that the Steelers have traded up for were Broderick Jones, Devin Bush, Santonio Holmes, and Troy Polamalu. If I'm not mistaken, those are the last 4.
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
Yeah, because Troy Polamalu, one of the greatest safeties, if not the best center or safety. God,
he could probably play center.
So center on the brain.
He could probably play center.
One of the top 3 safeties of all time. Santonio Holmes won a Super Bowl MVP, and Broderick Jones, obviously the jury's still out, and then Devin Bush, probably one of the biggest draft busts in the 21st century for the Steelers.
Or the 21st century.
Yeah. So the Steelers better make sure. I'll put it that way, and they'll do that too because they, if they were a team that did it pretty frequently, then Barber says you got the wrong day. Listen, Devin White's a free agent, and I don't think he's if he were the Devin that I think everybody expected him to be, I think he'd be one of the top guys on the market, and he's not. So, yeah. So It'll be interesting. I don't know if I can jump on board with the Steelers needing to trade up to get a center, because it's not like center is their only need, right? If Jackson Powers Johnson is taken 19, then 20, you still got tackle you can address. You still got cornerback you can address. There are still a couple of other positions that if there were a guy that's just you just would not think would be there, and it's a run up to the podium type situation, then you do that. I think the only way you possibly trade up is if you are getting something that is absolutely it's got to be something that's a slam dunk of some kind.
Right.
That's, and I don't see a center doing that. As much as center is a need, I just don't see that as a trade up worthy scenario there.
Here's the thing about that. If they move up to get a center, if they move up to get any position, I agree, it has to be a slam dunk, but I'll take it a step further. That center has to play 8 to 10 years in Pittsburgh. That center has to be Marquise Pouncey.
Mm-hmm.
If you move up, if you give up additional capital to get him, that center has to be a Marquise Pouncey type player, where he's here for his whole career. He's a very high caliber, high level player, and he does it for a consistent amount of time. That's the player you have to get, which is why, there's always risk in trading up, which is why when we talk about the prospect of the Steelers adding or getting rid of capital, so to speak, do they need to add? Do they need to get rid of capital? But also, if they try to trade up and quote unquote reach for a player, will it be worth their while?
Yeah. And kind of Mike in Texas brings that up too. He says we need to trade up close to 15 to get Powers Johnson, or trade to 10 or 12 in the second to get Frazier, unless we reach and take Frazier at 20. That idea of reaching to take Frazier at 20, that's how GMs get fired.
Right.
That is, if it's a guy who is not a first round caliber player and you take him in the first round, that's a good way to get fired.
And Khan won't do it. And Khan won't do that.
Not unless for whatever reason they have a first round grade on him, but I've not seen anything or even heard anything of the sort. Now that could change this week. Right. And that's why this week is so important, because this week that could change, in which you or anybody else, gets something from the Steelers in which they think very, very highly of Frazier, or even a lot of teams think very, very highly of Frazier, and all of a sudden he's a first round caliber center, then that's a different story. But as of right now, he's a second round grade type player. And especially when you look at all of the other positions that they have a need and that are really, really deep in this draft, like cornerback and like tackle.
Right.
That's a good way to get fired.
Let's put it this way, okay? What teams pick behind the Steelers? Pick 21's Miami, Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Arizona, Buffalo, Detroit, Baltimore, San Francisco, Kansas City, in that order, right? Of the teams that are behind Pittsburgh, Miami would be one, potentially Philadelphia, Dallas, potentially Green Bay, potentially Tampa Bay. Point is, there's a handful of teams, at least, that are behind the Steelers in the first round that could use an interior offensive lineman. So whether that's Powers Johnson or Frazier, okay, let's keep in mind, too, as well, okay? Let's say, for the sake of conversation, the Steelers do all their homework, and we'll keep this brief because we have to get to our final points. Let's say the Steelers do all their homework here at the Combine. Let's say they do all their homework on the pro days. And let's say, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, they value Frazier over Powers Johnson for whatever reason it might be, okay? Now, teams might be looking at the Steelers and saying, oh, they need a center badly. Powers Johnson has to be their guy at 20. Pound of the table. He has to be their guy at 20. And maybe Miami reaches ahead of Pittsburgh, or maybe Dallas, or maybe another team reaches ahead of the Steelers to go get them between, let's say, 15 to 19. Maybe that happens. And then that leaves the Steelers without him. Maybe they get outbid. Maybe whatever it has to be, okay? But let's say Frazier's still there at 20. Maybe Omar Khan looks at one of these teams and says, well, we have intel, or we believe that this team's going to go this way. This team's going to go that way. This team has intel going that way. This team has intel going the other way. And maybe they could slide back a few places and still have their cake and eat it too, by getting their top center if it's Frazier. Or maybe Powers Johnson slips to 20 and they just pick him. But maybe they do that homework. Maybe they find that. All these teams are doing that diligence as well, which is why the report came out, if you remember, when after the Broderick Jones, the trade to get the pick to get Broderick Jones, some reporting came out that Belichick partly did that to spite the Jets. He had intel the Jets were going to take Broderick Jones at 15.
Yeah.
And he pulled the trigger on the trade to let the Steelers jump the Jets, and that's why reportedly that's why the Steelers were able to get ahead. So you never really know. Like, teams do their homework on other teams as well. Let's not forget, not just on these players. So if Omar Khan has insight that, okay, the Cowboys or the Dolphins or the Chiefs, whoever it might be looking at Frazier, maybe they just slide back a couple spots and get another pick in the process. That's never out of the realm of possibility. All right, before we get out of here, I think you have some personal news too, Chris, that was announced over the weekend, both by DK and yourself, if you would like the floor.
Yeah. So I have recently accepted a promotion here at DK Pittsburgh Sports. I will be moving back up to Pittsburgh. Me and the whole family, appreciate it. We'll be moving this summer, June-ish time frame. Want to be up there and working and everything by the beginning of July would be the most ideal thing, because training camp starts July 20th ish, around that time. But we'll be covering the Steelers. And I've also taking on the role of managing editor as well. So we'll be working with the staff, working with Corey, working with Jose, Taylor, everybody on staff to just really enhance our coverage, and DK and I are willing to, are not just willing, but like excited to work together in that capacity. So, yeah, it's exciting. It's a bit bittersweet, because obviously we're very, very excited about the future, and but at the same time, my wife's entire family is here. I've lived here for 23 years, so I have I've built a life here, so it'll be a little bit difficult to leave here for sure, but definitely excited about it for sure. And don't worry, Corey's still going to be helping out on Steelers. This is not like some sort of like Corey's going away or anything like that. Like, Corey's still going to help out on Steelers, but Corey will be, having, obviously, that'll free up Corey to be able to focus on Pitt, especially during Pitt football and everything like that. But Corey will still absolutely have a presence on the Steelers beat as well. So yeah, it's exciting. We're already in the process of starting to get our house cleaned up, and we're meeting with the realtor on Wednesday and already beginning that process of getting everything together. So, yeah, I'm excited about it for sure. It's fun. And I really don't have much else to say about it, other than I appreciate all of the positive feedback that I got on social media and got on the site. Obviously, all the comments on the site stuff was very encouraging. So thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it, and definitely happy about it.
Yeah, you certainly have earned it. I'm proud of you. I'm very happy for you.
Thanks.
Just based on, not to peel the curtain back too much on conversations you and I have had, but I know this is something that you've wanted. I know this is something you've worked for, and everybody here is proud of you. We're excited. And now you get to clean the house up. You're going to be away from Buc-ee's, though. That's the big problem.
Yeah, and Whataburger.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
But I will gladly swap Whataburger for Permanis. I will say that. So if it's about the same price. I can get a Permani sandwich for about the same price as I would get a Whataburger meal. So
would you swap Buc-ee's for any other gas station? Brand notwithstanding.
You know what? I mean, like, whenever I was there for that year, man, like, Get-Go was I ate Get-Go pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Especially during Thanksgiving when they got the Pilgrim going, man. Oh my gosh.
I was a fan of the Captain. I'm in the Lent business, if you will.
Right.
And the Captain on certain Fridays has saved me before. Now, I am a big fish fry scene guy. By the way, if you have fish fry recommendations in the chat, that'd be great. Not this week. I will be in Indianapolis. So, be with the fam on Friday. But I'm going to need that fish fry recommendation for around Pittsburgh. Everybody has the best fish fry, so they say. Now, I went to one in Irwin last Friday. Let me tell you, the assembly line, the spread, the fare, all that, tremendous. So I need to know, from those in the chat that are local to Pittsburgh or maybe from Pittsburgh, who has the best fish fry in town?
A couple people asking, like, what do the kids think about moving? How's the family excited? I mean, the family's excited about it. We wouldn't be doing it if they were against it. Obviously, I'm not gonna twist my wife's arm that much. Or kids are excited about it. Obviously, they're nervous about like changing schools and stuff like that, but they're excited about it. Really quick, just to kind of close out, because I did see Michael ask us a couple times. What's wrong with the tackles we have? I mean, Dan Moore, is that your answer at tackle? I mean, Roderick Jones, yes. I mean, definitely build off of that. But Dan Moore's got 1 year left in this contract, and he's been very underwhelming so far. So that's why tackle is always talked about.
Mm-hmm. Mike says this podcast going to continue, so we believe the show will go on. We have not been told any differently, so there you go. All right, we're going to get out of here again. For those that might have missed the beginning of the show. The originally scheduled Omar Khan media availability for today at 5:30 Eastern has been postponed. Omar had a death in the family he is tending to, so he will not be meeting with local reporters tonight. He was supposed to do a local reporter scrum from those from Pittsburgh. And then tomorrow at 10:30 is the scheduled availability at the Indiana Convention Center for the NFL Combine. That is still on as of right now, but subject to change. So we'll do our best to follow up on all that. A great time for me to plug DKPittsburghSports.com and the Steelers feed. If you're not following that, Please do. If you have not downloaded our app yet, free on the Apple App Store, free on the Google Play Store. And the best part about it is everything's free to read. And the second best part about that is it's a live social media feed for all your favorite teams. You can turn on notifications. You can turn on the Pirates or the Steelers or the Penguins. You can turn all of them. You can turn one of them. You can turn none of them if you really want to. But that's where everything's going. Okay, we're going right to the website, DKPittsburghSports.com. On that Steelers feed, that's where all the content from this week in Indianapolis is going to be, whether it's feed content, press conference content, stories that I write, whatever it might be. That's where it's all going to go. So important to plug that right now.
It'll be there. And I mean, like, as soon as we have updates on when Omar is talking, that'll be there. That'll be alerted out. I mean, all that stuff. I mean, that's the place to get all of your information. And we obviously try to update as fast as possible, up to the minute, everything like that, up to the second, really. Just anytime anything happens with this team, it's there and it'll be there. And that obviously will not change, once I'm up there in a few months. So, but we'll have that's even just more eyes and ears on it, not just from afar, but obviously from right there. So
I'll leave a human brain disclaimer too. I'm one person, boots on the ground here in Indianapolis, and there are 300 some odd players testing and interviewing and everything. So I will be doing as much as I can, obviously on the floor at the convention center, interviewing players, talking to players, seeing what I can get. But Chris is going to be a major part of that as well in this coverage. So make sure you stay tuned to that feed on DKPittsburghSports.com, because Chris is going to be heavily involved in that as well.
Yes. Also, really, really quick to let you guys know, probably know me next week.
That's right.
Family and I are heading to Florida, to Orlando, a couple days at Disney. Will be fun.
Land too? You going to Universal?
No, we're not doing the Universal this time. We did Universal last time we went, but we're doing only a couple days at Disney. We're gonna go to the Strawberry Festival, kind of in that area. That's this really cool thing. My dad and stepmom got tickets to the Zach Williams concert there, so they're gonna go to that, and then the family and I are gonna, while they go to that concert, we're gonna go to the Strawberry Festival. They got rides and everything. It's kind of like a state fair type thing. So, and so we're excited about that. Of course, I'll play golf with my dad. I don't go to Florida without the intention of playing golf. So,
absolutely.
this is already in the works well before any kind of promotion or anything like that. So, so I will be out all next week. The show will continue as often as possible. Obviously, Corey will be back from Indianapolis next week. So get ready for a lot of solo Corey.
It'll be a lot of you as well. Trust me. We'll be talking combine wrap up and everything, and we'll see if we can get some guests. You never know. You never know who's going to pop in. I might be able to make a couple phone calls. I'll put it that way. Once I'm done here in Indianapolis. All right, DK and Ramon coming up in just about 25 minutes here or so, whenever the bell might be. Let's go 404 today. He's Chris. I'm Corey. This has been the Southside Beat. I'm going to do my best to be here this week. Depends on schedules and media availabilities and whatnot. So
yeah,
Chris will be here with you all week. I'm going to do my best to be here all week. We'll see how it works out. But I will be solo, as Barbara says, next week, which we're looking forward to. Chris will have a nice little R&R. All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one, everybody. Cheers.